Hello and welcome back to the Lee's Summit Town Hall Podcast. I'm your host, Nick Parker. A quick reminder that the podcast is brought to the good people of Lee's Summit by Budget Blinds of Lee's Summit, a great local business run by a greater local family. They are your home for enlightened style shades. You can get all your good home decor stuff there. If you want to get those smart shades, you want to control your blinds or your shades with your phone, this is the place to go. You can just say, hey, Alexa, hey, Siri, any of those things, and they will open and close them for you. Or you can put them on timers. That's always fun. So when you're ready to make your home a smart home, go see our friends at Budget Blinds. Tell them Nick sent you. Okay. It's almost Election Day. We're recording this on a Thursday, but we're about a week and a half away from Election Day, and let's talk about the big thing. Our guest today, Dr. David Buck, the Superintendent at Lee's Summit R7 Schools, and Associate Superintendent, Dr. Steve Shelton. Welcome, guys.
Thanks for having us. Always a pleasure.
So we're going to talk about the bond issue that's on the ballot. It's a short ballot this time around. I'm hoping that does not, or your spring break also, does not hurt our voter turnout. We always strive to get more people out. It's a little low. I'm always disappointed. I want more people to vote.
The past few elections, we've had more people than historical, so hopefully we keep that trend.
Are you taking credit for that?
No.
Well, let's talk about the bond issue. It's a $225 million no tax increase bond issue on the ballot. Here's the thing I can say, because I know people hear $225 million, they think it's a lot. Hey, we're not Texas, folks. A friend of mine runs a paper down near Dallas. They just passed recently a $2 billion bond issue. So, we're not Texas.
Yes, and I'd say 5 years ago we did a $224 million bond, so only $1 million more than we did 5 years ago.
Do you feel good about ratcheting it up?
Yes, so at the time of this taping, we've done 48 speaking engagements, talked to 2,300 people, and a lot of support throughout the community.
Well, that's good. I want to start off with the big elephant in the giant Lee's Summit room, right? Because I think this is the thing that might confuse the most people, because everybody's talked about what are we going to do with Lee's Summit Elementary, with the downtown elementary school. But I think we need to talk about that's not really part of this.
Correct. So there is an additional elementary that will be worked on in this bond issue, and it's yet to be determined which one. We've put an all-call, and we put together a committee. They'll start working here in April to look at what we do with Westview and Lee's Summit Elementary. And it's made up of parents and staff members from those two buildings.
And that's a thing that'll be decided later.
Correct.
Right. So I thought it was good to clear that up. The other clarification thing I want to get with people so that we can take a little time to be nerdy here, guys, is what a bond issue actually is, because I think there are buckets that you get to use monies for, right? And so a bond issue actually covers what?
Well, it covers our capital needs. So in the world of school finance, you have a general operating budget and you have a capital budget. And how do you put money in that capital budget? And there are a number of ways that we do that with our levy and some transfer out of the general fund. But really, the big way we put money into that capital budget is through bonds. And so what happens, we go to the voters, we ask them for approval of a certain dollar amount, and whatever that dollar amount is, then we're able to go to the investors, sell our bonds to those investors, they give us their money. We take that money, we make capital improvements, and after we make those capital improvements, we pay back those investors with our debt service levy of 87 cents.
So it cannot be used for salaries, it cannot be used for benefits, it cannot be used for consumables or small items that aren't going to last long. Those are on our operating budget. This will only be things that are going to last for decades.
This is basically everything to do with buildings, correct? Spaces, physical spaces.
That and big pieces of equipment. So if you think of a kiln in an art room or a giant oven in a cafeteria or an HVAC system. So for example, Lee's Summit North is 30 years old this year. It still has its original.
That's crazy to think about.
It is. Its original HVAC is still running. So we know if you had an air conditioner at your house 30 years old, you're living on borrowed time. It's time. And that cost to replace a system that size is $12 million. So that's why we need bond issues to help keep up with all of our 3.7 million square feet of facilities, 2.7 million square feet of roof, 99 acres of parking lots. And a lot of our buildings, we had a huge growth in the 90s and early aughts, are now 25 to 30 years old.
That's kind of weird to think about, because in my head, North and West are still new-ish.
Yeah, Summit Lakes is 25 years old.
Yeah.
Hawthorne Hill is 26 years old. We have a lot of buildings built in that kind of time frame.
Yeah, I just saw. I think it was a social media post somewhere about Summit Lakes and their 25th anniversary.
Yes.
Like, wait a minute, that was just a couple years ago.
And a couple more than that.
Right. Well, let's talk a little bit about some of the projects and what do you think are some of the priority things that you really, I mean, you need to do all of them is the pitch you're making, but let's start with some of those things that will be accomplished if this passes.
I'll start off with the two elementaries that are going to be new builds, and then I'll turn it over to Dr. Shelton for talk about PLMS and some other projects. The two big ones are two new builds. So two of our three oldest buildings are Greenwood Elementary. The original building is 1910, and Hazel Grove, original building is 1940. Both of them also have size issues. So, for example, at Greenwood, 130 to 170 kids a year go to Woodland Elementary that live west of Greenwood. So they get on a bus, they literally drive right in front and wave at Greenwood. In fact, across the street, you can have someone talking in their yard looking 50 feet away at the school, do not attend Greenwood. So this will allow this new build, we already bought the acreage, will allow us to build a bigger building, be more accessible, and I'll talk about that here in a second, and serve all of Greenwood proper. That frees up space for Woodland, who has 7 active subdivisions being worked on and hundreds upon hundreds of acres for sale in the southeast corner. We were worried we were going to need a 19th elementary. This will allow us not to have to do that, so it'll be a cost savings, and Woodland can take on that growth then.
How do you keep up with all of that? Because I think that's a thing that maybe most of us don't think about is the continued growth of our community, right? We're adding more subdivisions, we're adding more housing. To plan ahead, can Underwood handle that, or is it you
Yes.
build this one so that they can and
Yes, so we do that.
change?
We do that. In fact, we have a 30-year outlook, and so part of this we'll talk about later is buying land within PRI land about where development's coming and where the bubble maps show densities will be at.
And part of the process is that we do a demographic study on a regular basis, and our demographer will not only give us projections for the next couple of years, but projections for 10 or 20 or 30 years, and then we take those projections along with our current building utilization and building usage and determine where are those pockets coming, and that demographic study won't just be a district number; it'll be by attendance area, by building, and so we have a pretty good idea of where we're going to be in the next 3 to 5 to 10 years, and we take that information and make plans and according to that information.
How often are those? Is that reviewed? I mean, we have a census every 10 years.
So we do this annually. We've had the same demographer for the last 23 years, and we're putting together a process now where we have a group out of our CFMP, our Comprehensive Facility Master Plan group. We're going to have a subcommittee that's going to review that annually and make recommendations to the Board of Education. Hey, this is what you might want to be thinking about in the next 3 years or next 5 years, or here's a trend you may want to focus on. So we'll have a larger group of citizens involved in that. In the past, it's just been the Board of Education. So we'll have a citizens group who sits with the demographer and studies that, and then makes recommendations to the Board of Education.
Well, let's go backward a little bit and talk about the Greenwood Elementary.
Yes.
You've bought land.
Yes.
Where are we looking? Where's that going to be?
So if you know where Hit Park is, it's due east of that. The eastern border of it's on 2nd Street, which is the road that goes to the rock quarries. We'd like to not go on 2nd Street because there is a lot of rock quarry trucks that go down there. But we have 99 acres there. We'll use 15 to 20 acres for this, and then we'll decide what to do with the rest of it. But it was one block. It took us a while to find a block of land in Greenwood that would serve Greenwood proper. I want to hit 2 other reasons why we would want to move from Greenwood Elementary. And the staff and the parents have been very, very excited and supportive about this move because it's not very ADA accessible. If you are handicapped or mobility issues, you have to call ahead, and we meet you at the library door, bring you in the library, and walk you throughout the entire building, get to the main office. If you want to get to the gymnasium, we have to take you to the south wing where an elevator is, go down, and then take you across outside the parking lot into the gym. So it has some major issues, and it's safety-wise. Both the playground and school are super close to 150. And again, rock quarry trucks often are coming down there many a day to get to 291. So safety issues wise, if a kid wanders off of the playground or anything like that, you have immediate heavy traffic, and we'd like to be set back. More like if you think of Highland Park, all of our new builds will be set back like Highland Park.
those are similar issues to what you're considering over at Hazel Grove Elementary as well, right?
Correct. So Hazel Grove, 1940, we've added on to it many times. Same situation. If you want to get to the office, we have to meet you in a side door and walk you through the building. If you want to get to the cafeteria, I was just there a couple weeks ago. There was a kindergartner in a wheelchair with a broken leg. We have to wheel him outside, go down a hill, and then into the cafeteria. That's great when it's 80 degrees and nice.
Right.
It's not so great when it's snow or sleet or like yesterday, really,
And as
really
we've
windy.
learned, we can have all those in one day.
We can, or definitely in 1 week. So there's a safety issue also there as far as where its location is. An interesting safety issue there is that Reinhardt Road runs on the back side of the building, and it's probably about 8 feet higher than the building, and yet it's maybe only 10 feet away from the library. So when you're sitting there, this big glass walled library, you're watching cars. If anybody came off the road, they're coming in the building. And it's an old building with a lot of bones issues. Instead of a breaker box, it has a fuse box with screw-in fuses. There's a reason why you don't see screw-in fuses anymore, because they're less safe, right? So it has some backbone issues.
Do you have a plan for Greenwood? Do you have a similar plan for Hazel Grove yet, or is that still kind of in process?
We have multiple pieces of property we're vetting out right now for potential. It will be a bigger building, and it will allow us to take on the growth from both Discovery Park, that's getting ready to start going vertical here soon, as well as north of Colburn Library. There's 250 houses platted to be built there. When those come, then they would also go to Hazel Grove. So both buildings will be bigger than the current buildings and built to take on the growth of the areas.
The Greenwood building is very close to the original Greenwood building.
Yes.
Do you try to do that? Like, is it the hope that Hazel Grove will also be not a far move, or does that matter?
It matters, but it'll be a little farther because we're on Unity Village.
Right.
So it will be a little bit farther away than as far as where the new build will be. It may be very much closer to the attendance density of that building, but it will be farther away from the current location.
Do you is some of those sites that you're considering, are those also on Unity, or are you getting out of that area?
We have 3 sites we're looking at currently. Nice try.
I tried. I tried to say it, a little sly.
Now, one of the questions we get asked about these 2 buildings: what happens to the buildings when we get out of them? So we put out an all call. We had about 100 patrons put in requests. 50 were selected to be then part of a reimagining group, and we have Dr. Christy Barger leading that group. They've already met 3 times. They're starting with our CSIP and our needs and looking at what can we repurpose those buildings for. With Hazel Grove, that group also has an extra layer to decide. Let's make a recommendation for, do we keep it or not? Unity Village and the MOU, like I said, we took it over in the 40s, says if we stop using it or stop having a playground, they get it back. So if we decide to stop using it, they get it back. And we've talked to Unity Village, and they're interested in taking it back if we're not going to use it. So that's one of the recommendations. Do we want to repurpose it, or do we just want to let it go and go back to Unity Village?
Well, let's look at some of the other projects that are on this list. I know some of them are, look, you're doing some sports related stuff. You're doing some new programming within the district. There's security issues. There's a lot really packed into this.
There definitely is, and Dr. Buck, touched on a few of these items, and so just to kind of go back a little bit more high level, there are 5 major priorities that we want to address throughout all of these projects: ADA accessibility, safety and security, future-ready learning spaces, infrastructure upgrades, programmatic improvements. All of those areas are things that you're going to hear as we talk about these projects. Dr. Buck touched on accessibility at Greenwood and Hazel Grove, infrastructure upgrades with the fuse box, and those types of things, and the roofs and mechanical. And so those are all the themes that you're going to hear as we talk about these. And so another project that we're bringing forward is Pleasantly Middle School. We began this work in 2020 in that bond, and we're going to continue this in 25. And our goal in this phase of the cycle is to add a 6th grade pod on the north side of Pleasantly Middle School. And then in the academic wing, which is right beside this parking lot where we're going to build the 6th grade pod. In that academic wing, we want to renovate that space so we have a 7th grade and 8th grade area or pod space so that we get that experience like our students at East Trails Middle School are getting, where they have a 6th grade pod, 7th grade pod, 8th grade pod. We want our Pleasantly Middle School students to have that same type of experience. It's working really well at East Trails Middle School, and Pleasantly Middle School is excited to have this opportunity as well.
Aside from matching what the other school does, because really we want to avoid all of this school's different, but what's the importance of having the separations within the grades?
So they find academic collaboration really well. Plus, the kids aren't traveling back and back, as much. So if you think about the current setup, all the science rooms are in one spot. So the entire building has to navigate the entire
right
across the building, and it's not a building that's all one level. I mean, it's got multiple levels and such, right? So it's going to be an efficiency and also a collaboration space for teachers, and it feels like a home setting. So Summit Lakes does this as well. They have a different setup. They have a 6th grade, 7th grade, and 8th grade wing. Also, PLMS doing this work. PLE and PLMS will both be sponges for when the church land first gets developed. It's not like Field of Dreams are going to build schools and then they come. They're going to come and then we got to build schools. But the first tranches of people, we need a place for them to go. And so PLMS and PLE are just north of that, and they will probably be the sponge for the first developments.
That's where that first wave, you think, of new students.
Yes.
So it'll increase that space, but also it'll address, the needs, and I mentioned those priority areas. It's going to make those programmatic improvements by that 6th grade pod, 7th grade pod, 8th grade pod. It also will provide opportunities for infrastructure upgrades. And so our goal there, if you've ever been to Pleasantly Middle School at the beginning of the day or the end of the day, it's right beside Pleasantly Elementary. So dismissal and arrival and buses and cars and after-school activities, it gets really congested there right now. And so our hope is to add a second entrance exit onto Purcell's, and then a long drive up the east side of that property with additional parking on the southeast corner of Pleasantly Middle School, so that we can separate the cars and the buses for both of them and that arrival and dismissal time. So, and then of course after school, Pleasantly Middle School has cross country and football and volleyball in the fall, and when all that goes on at the same time, and it always seems to go on at the same time, and then mix that with Pleasantly Elementary's dismissal, it gets really congested. And so our hope is to improve that site structure as well, so that we can improve efficiencies before and after school.
Fun story. I only experienced that at Pleasantly Middle School a little bit because my son was a 7th grader in the COVID year, so he had about a semester of middle school at Pleasantly and then was home.
And so there's going to be a lot of great work done there, and touch on, meet their specific need, but really, once again, getting back to those high level things of ADA accessibility, safety and security, programmatic upgrades, as well as, those infrastructure upgrades, but also that future ready learning space. And Dr. Buck touched on this. You go to East Trails Middle School, they have not only the formal classroom setting space, but they have collab space, both for large group and small groups and breakout rooms. And it just really, really works well. And the feedback we're getting from East Trails Middle School staff is just that it's just a great way to educate our students.
How hard is it? Because we're talking about a lot of aging buildings. I mean, the Pleasantly buildings aren't as old as Greenwood Elementary, but they ain't young either, right?
Yes.
I mean,
Right, exactly.
How hard is it because the needs of education are different, and classroom setup and the way we teach and the way we work with students is different. How hard is it to keep rehabbing these old buildings to meet those needs of today's classrooms?
Every project is different. So if you think of Mason Elementary, we did that. We expanded it and renovated the entire building. That took about 18 months, but it laid out really well. Plus, we had a lot of land right there to stage, and so we were able to get kids in and out and operate. Lee Summit High was much more difficult. Lee Summit High, you're talking multiple buildings. We added 64,000 square feet to connect all the buildings, because we're not in California. You don't need to walk outside to go to class, and as well as renovate the entire building. It was a big building, and 70 years old, parts of it. So that was a much more challenging. It took us 3 years, and we were under budget and on time, but on time was like the week of. I mean, it was close.
Look, that's impressive that the district got it done when it did, with all of the things, we don't have to go into it, but all of the things that were kind of pressing against finishing on time and under budget. That was an impressive build.
That entire bond issue from 2020 was completed by 2024, under budget and on time. Very proud of that.
able to add a lot of great projects along the way as well. Miller Park was added, geometry and construction buildings, along with the robotics space at all 3 high schools. All those were adds. Paradise Park was an add to the 2020 bond because of the environment we were in as far as investments, as well as just the efficient way that even those difficult times, the efficient way that we went about constructing all these projects during that time frame.
What do you think, and I think this is a good thing to talk about with people who are getting ready to hit, what do you think allows you as a district to be successful in that? To say to people, hey, we can do this again.
So we stage it. First of all, we got multiple architects work for us that oversee our facilities programs, and they do a great job. But we stage it, and so it's not all done at once. But we already have things being ready now. So we'll go out to bid this year on some projects, and we'll tier all these projects together in different tranches. Because when we get the funds, when we sell a bond, we have to spend 85% of it within 3 years. So we do need to turn it around fast, or we wait forever to sell a bond, and you're not going to get as much for your money. If you think about Lee Summit West, I think it was a $40 million build. That's what we're thinking Greenwood Elementary is going to cost us this year, 20 years later. We know the cost of renovating and expanding Mason in 2020, that was $16 million. Today, it would be over $30 million to do that same project. So the longer you wait, the less bang you get for the money you ask for. So we want to be fast to get there, but we bring everybody in. So there are design teams of staff members and such with Greenwood Elementary right now working on the plan. So we can go out to bid maybe September or October and start working on that new project.
It's a really tight. It's about people and process. People and process. We've got great people in place, both internally and externally, but also a very tight process. And luckily, and we have people like our director of facilities, Kyle Gorell. He's been here 20 years. He's been through multiple bond cycles, multiple bond projects, and that internal team, they've got it down. They've got it down to a science and an art, and we've got great people, and we've got a great process as well.
The size of the lot makes a difference too. So Mason, we had a nice size lot. Greenwood and Hazel Grove, we do not. Right. They're tiny little footstand. It's like a pizza pie shape with nothing but 2 roads and a deep ravine at the end of it for Hazel Grove. Where we would stage the work, if we have to move kids out of a section and to mobile units while we rehab that section, we were struggling finding that space. Whereas at Mason, we didn't have that struggle. So it was a disruption at Mason. It would be a much bigger disruption at Greenwood and Hazel Grove if we were to rehab those while we're in the buildings.
Right. And can you? I mean, I think could you actually rehab a 1910 building into the needs of today?
Some of it we could not. There would be limitations on some of it. There's no doubt about that.
Let's go to the safety and security stuff, because I think we are all trained now in our brains to think about security and safety more than we did when us olds were going to school. What are you trying to do? What is the mission now, I guess,
Sure.
as far as what does safety and security mean with these buildings?
So I'll first go to new builds and rehabs. When we do those, we try to put in either safety glass, which they say takes you 6 minutes with a sledgehammer to get through it. Probably take me longer. I don't think I'm not as young as I used to be.
Let's not give ourselves grades.
Or there's bulletproof glass. It depends on sections. And every so many classrooms there'll be reinforced, extra thick doors, hard to get through, so kids can collapse into during an intruder situation, right? Which we've never had and we hope to never have. So
it's weird for me to think that our schools are talking about a need for bulletproof glass.
So all of our new builds and our rehabs that we did in 2020 had all these safety features in, as well as secure vestibule. So you can't just walk into the office. You have to check in through a camera. And we have that sometimes. We had somebody at one of our elementaries last month try to come in with a fake business name, and our staff did the right thing and said, show us your ID, and we don't see you on the list, and we don't know, but let's call and ask if this company really exists. And the person left, all right? And the person had a Texas license plate, turned out, right? That's the systems we put in place now. I will say an extra layer that we're looking at now, if you think about the school shooting in Georgia at the beginning of the school year, they had a device on a lanyard. The teacher could just, as soon as they saw it, push the button 6 times, not only notified that we need to be in lockdown, but also notified police, and police could see where at in the building you are. So it increased the reaction time and decreased the harm done during that situation. We are piloting something like that in one of our buildings right now, and we will eventually, either next year or the year afterwards, we'll have 2,900 employees with something on the lanyard that they could do that.
That is amazing, but also again,
we hope it's never used.
My brain has trouble with that.
We hope it's never used.
And it's about people and process. Once again, we've got a process in place. We think about emergency operation plans that has 4 quadrants. We think about prevention and mitigation. What can we do to prevent and mitigate? What do we need to do to prepare? That training piece, and then practice response. And so that we know in the event that something does happen, whatever it may be, and there are many types of emergencies that may occur, how do we respond? And then how do we recover, get back to normal, get back to our normal business?
Does the infrastructure of, like you talked about, redoing the traffic flow at Pleasantly Middle School and stuff, does that all play into that as well?
Yes, and that's what was a struggle at Greenwood, because parent drop off and pick up in the buses.
It doesn't really exist there.
It's really tough, but we don't have land to change it.
Right.
And so we were really struggling. Hey, we want to improve this like we have in other places, but how do we do that? So in that existing site. So that was a challenge that we were having a hard time figuring out.
Well, I want to make sure that I let you guys get back to your real jobs instead of just hanging out with me. So when you were out, you did 46 of these in the last...
Yeah, 48, 2,400 people we've talked to so far, yeah.
Break down, like, what is your pitch? Why, as people go to the polls, why are you hoping that the people vote yes?
Because our community has told us they want us to do this. So we have asked. We had, maybe 1,700 people fill out a survey at last fall. Over 90% of folks on multiple questions were like, yes, take care of the $1.5 billion of facilities you have. We believe school districts is a pride of our community, and we need to invest in it. Yes, we need to invest and take care of our facilities. So we've had that response, and this is part of that response. So we've had about 200 people involved in this since 23, building to this point, to come up with a list. Dr. Shelton and I will tell you, this is probably not exactly my list. It's not exactly his list, because it's a collaboration and it's a consensus list. And the board voted 7-0 to put it on. All board members are supporting it. All board candidates are supporting it. And when we go out, that's what we hear too, is people are supporting it. We need to take care of what we have. We made a list of all the potential needs, $560 million. So this is still going to be $250 million short of all of our needs. We can't do everything.
Can we get that Texas money?
Well, probably not. Just like at your house, though. You can't do all the things to your house, right? But this is going to allow us to take care of the most important things. And there are some nice things in there as well. I mean, our band and soccer parents are very excited about having an all-weather surface for them to practice and play on. Bringing up Lee Summit West and North to have a turf field and a baseball, softball field to match what Lee Summit High has. You have $72 million of maintenance. The land purchase. So I talked about the church land. Eventually, the city's saying 40,000 more people in the city limits in 30 years. So we have 106,000 now, added 40,000 people in 30 years. Well, we're going to have to need spots. So we have 5 elementaries we're trying to get. We've already identified exactly 4, working with the city and the church. A 5th one, we have an area, and we're trying to figure the one out. Another middle school, another high school, so that when the development comes, we are ready and prepared to go. Just like East Trails, when we needed it, that land was there. Once you break it down to this, each developer has this 80 acres, this 50 acres. It's harder to get that land, so that's where we're working directly with the church.
You've mentioned a few times about collaboration, about getting feedback from the people. If people listening or people involved in the schools with their kids or whatever, if they want to be involved, if they want to maybe throw their name in the hat for one of these commissions, because there are a lot, how do they do that?
Reach out to us. And so we often put out all calls, just like the reimagining group, to say what happens to Greenwood and Hazel Grove if this bond's successful. We talked about, we put on all calls. So we do that sometimes. But also you can just reach out. And so when we know your name's out there, when there's an opportunity that arises. The CFMP is an ongoing group, but it has cycles, right? It gets really big, and then it has downtime, and it gets really big. But we have groups that do that. Citizen Advisory Committee, the same way.
And is that through the web? Is that through your website? What's the website? Where can people go?
You can reach out. Just reach out directly to us. I mean, that's what I would say. There probably is some things on our website. I'm not the website guru, but I'm sure there are places you can go on there.
You don't know all things?
No, definitely not.
Oh.
Dr. Buck touched on this, and you've touched on this as well. Specifically, though, to this bond issue, opportunities to get involved is at that comprehensive facility master plan team level, and we do meet. As Dr. Buck mentioned. Sometimes it's a large group over many meetings, and sometimes it's small groups, taking on specific topics. But there are opportunities to get involved, and we encourage folks to get involved. This plan, this comprehensive facility master plan, goes out 50 years. And so we've mapped out the work that needs to be done. And so this is work that's well thought out, well planned. Folks are at the table helping us make these plans based on the information, the data that's in front of us. And so we take that information, make the plan, and now as we have this opportunity in 25 to take these bond funds and to work that plan as we address the needs of our facilities, but really address the needs of our students and our staff.
Before I move to my last two things, is there anything else on the bond issue that maybe I missed or we need to make sure that people know as they consider their vote?
So one of the questions we've been asked a few times, not a ton, because I think most people understand how bonds work now, is what happens to the tax rate if it doesn't pass? It stays the same. The tax rate from the debt service will be 87 cents whether it passes or fail when December comes. Same for next year's December. Same for the December after that. In fact, it will stay the same for 10 years. It would be 2035 before it would lower. We're going to have to pass a bond issue, obviously, before 2035, as we're about to have this growth from our church land. Some of it's being sold now, and some of it will be sold later. So we just know that when you're voting, when you hear that no tax rate increase, your tax rate will not go down if you vote no. But our staff and our community have been so supportive everywhere we've gone. People are very excited about it. We have a lot of endorsements. The Chamber has endorsed it. The Economic Development Council has endorsed it. Both our teacher unions have endorsed it. Kansas City Chambers, their small group has already said yes, and their bigger group is going to consider endorsement here pretty soon. So it's good for us. It also brings a lot of business to our community. So that's construction going on, $200-something million of construction going on in our area. That's bringing people with jobs, and they're spending their cash on their gas stations and restaurants and other shopping before and after. It is an economic driver for us as well.
We've been doing this show, but I think this is episode 860.
Congratulations!
Thank you. But the point is, though, is I think we have said so many times on this that when you tell people the story they tell to recruit to Lee Summit or why they come to Lee Summit, there's really two things on the front of every pamphlet. There's downtown and there's the schools. Those are the big things that really how we sell our community, right?
Yes, and that's what the community has told us in our surveys, right? Our system, if you think of all the students and all of our employees, we're the size of Sedalia, the entire city. Man, woman, and child in Sedalia is about 21,000 people. We're about 21,000 people when you get our staff and students together. So we're a big operation, but really it's all about supporting what happens in the classrooms every single day. We were over at Meadow Lane this morning, and I'm getting a hug from a teacher who used to work with one of my kids, right? And talking about the things that matter. It's about relationships and helping each and every kid grow. And I cannot be more proud of the work we've done. We got more to do, but we're a high-performing district with high opportunities and a strong sense of belonging.
I have two final things. One is we were recording this on a Thursday. Last night was your third 100 People Who Care event. How'd that go? Who was our person, our group that won?
It went wonderful. I want to thank Carl Chinnery. I came up with this idea and came with Carl, and Carl partnered with me. Carl's such a blessing to our district and our community. He has authored 132 different nonprofits paperwork to become a nonprofit for free. He's got a giving heart. So he's partnered with me. This year I asked Matt Baird to join me as a chamber, and he has joined me. We had somewhere, I think 30 or 35 nonprofits there. The winner last night was Answering the Call, which is there to help out families when an officer gets harmed and take off, you can't work, and all of a sudden you have bills, issues, and such. They come and they write checks and help out the family to take care of them so they can worry about getting healthy again and back. So they won last night. I think they walked away with about $8,000. It's a wonderful event. It's a feel-good event. And I learn about groups each time I go to it. There's nonprofits that I know wrap around their arms around our community when they're in need, and there's a lot of good folks doing good work out here.
Well, that leads me to I can tease my own thing here. I can make this about me again, Dr. Bell.
I almost did it for you.
Our next Nonprofit Spotlight lunch event is actually featuring Answering the Call. That's April 15th. So if you want to come have lunch to forget about tax day, Come out there, learn about answering the call. They have it's a great story, and the work they do in that first responder community is huge. The way it reaches not just first responders here in Lee Summit, but throughout the metro, and they've even done some things a little bit outside when the cause is there. So it's a good opportunity. That's noon on April 15th here at Bridge Space. My last thing for both of you here, we're gonna tip off the NCAA tournament in about an hour. Who's your team? Who are you guys picking?
Well, I went to Mizzou, so I got to root for Mizzou. Although I don't know if they got the defense to do anything. Their offense is amazing, but
I'll pick Mizzou. It's fine. Dr. Shelton?
I'm a KU guy.
Oh, this might be your last trip in the ball. Sorry. I'm sorry. How do you work with him?
It's hard. It's hard. I'll answer for him. It's hard.
I got an email from Ronald McDonald earlier. He's asking KU for his shoes back.
Yes.
We've been relying on football as Mizzou fans. They've been relying on basketball. So.
Yes. Not our
best.
Dr. Buck,
Dr. Shelton, thanks so much for coming out. I appreciate the time to talk about the bond issue and to help kind of clarify what it means so that voters have the information they need before they go to the polls.
Appreciate you, Nick.
Thank you, and go Mizzou. That'll wrap us up for this week. We'll talk to everybody next time.